With a mission to deliver fiscally responsible, highly dependable services to the citizens of our community and the region with integrity and professionalism, this is the City of Albany Commission meeting with Mayor Bo Duro, Mayor Pro Tem John Howard, Ward 1, Matt Fuller, Ward 2, BJ Fletcher, Ward 3, Chad Warbington, Ward 4, Bob Langstaff Jr., Ward 5, Demetrius Young, Ward 6, City Manager Sharon Subadale, City Clerk Sonia Talbot, and City Attorney Nathan Davis. This is the City of Albany Commission meeting.
We'll call the meeting to order. This is the work session, virtual meeting. Could we call the roll, Madam Clerk?
Yes, here. Here. Here.
I'm here. Can we check and see if Commissioner Fuller and Commissioner Fletcher are on the line? Do they? Madam Clerk, did Commissioner Fuller and/or Commissioner Fletcher respond?
No, I haven't heard from either.
Okay, I'm afraid that we might have some technical problems. Should we proceed?
Well, you do have a quorum there.
Yes, but if Commissioner Fuller and Commissioner Fletcher are not here,
Can someone text Commissioner Fuller the dial-in number?
Yes, I can go ahead and do that. And Commissioner Fletcher said she's working on her audio. She got it.
Okay. The first item, Madam Clerk.
That is amending section 2-32 of the city code.
Could I ask the city attorney to explain what this item is?
Is this the one on the standards?
This municipal court.
Yeah, this is following the discussion at the retreat to change the standards for 1 year's trial experience and 25 years of age as it relates to both positions, municipal court solicitor and the public defender. Thank you.
Is there any discussion on this item? Mayor Pro Tem?
No comment.
Commissioner Fuller? Commissioner Fletcher? Commissioner Warbington?
No.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No.
Commissioner Young?
No, sir.
And with that, we're not voting on this tonight, correct? I think we're all aware of what this is trying to make these two positions more attractive for lawyers who might be willing to serve as solicitor or prosecutor in the city court. The next item, Madam Clerk.
That is amending section 36, 206 and 207 of the city code.
Commissioner.
Again, this deals with the blighted property ordinance. The authority for the ordinance we have in place actually comes from the Georgia Constitution. Most of the time they come from a Georgia statute. And under this constitutional provision, which y'all have adopted in your ordinance, local governments, cities and counties can assess a larger millage rate against blighted properties. The process is a lot like the abatement cases. A petition is served on the property owner outlining the issues with the property, and there's an opportunity to be heard in municipal court. And if the court finds it is blighted property, which is defined in the ordinance, then the order will provide what needs to be done to bring it out of that stage. And then there's a 3%, 3 times, increase in the city millage rate. This ordinance would increase the city's millage rate to 6 times the rate. More incentive for the property owner to do that. And of course, it's required that if a property owner does bring it, I'll say, back into an unblighted state, then the property owner would get a consequent reduction in the millage rate for that, as long as it stays in the unblighted condition. So that's the gist of this. Thank you.
Any discussion, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, sir.
Didn't we use this blighted property tax against a property on North Slappy and a property on North Jackson?
Yeah, yes, sir. The one that was a former car dealership on Slappy, and the other one is what you mentioned. And the taxes were imposed, and they were paid, I know, on the former car dealership, and then that property was sold eventually. And I forget the details on the other one though. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Fuller. Commissioner Fletcher.
What we're proposing is to double what we have been charging for the blighted property tax, correct?
That's correct. It would go from your millage rate is in the low 9s, I believe, and so it would go to 6 times that on the if the court finds it's blighted.
Okay, I agree.
Thank you.
Commissioner Worthington, you brought this item to the table. You'd like to speak to it?
Yes, I would. So I guess there's 2 things I want to offer support. Number one is that we enforce the tax, period. As you go around, as a city commission, as a city, we're putting a lot of money towards demolition. And I believe this is one way for us to try to recoup some of our costs. Some of these commercial properties, in my opinion, actually make the properties around it worse. And so we've got to get more aggressive at applying this tax. Myself, I went around and just 25 properties and just my comings and goings of my daily life. I've made a list of 25 properties. I forwarded that to the city attorney. And so we can find these properties really easily in town, unfortunately. And we need to get very aggressive. And it's just another tool in our toolbox that we need to be using. The second support I have is for the 6%. Again, the 25 properties that I did, just a check on the amount of money really is not a lot of money. Most, the 2 examples that were just talked about, those owners gladly paid that 3%. I mean, that 3 times to kind of get us off their back. And I think 6% is a good place to start. Might even need to be 10% at some day. But really, these property owners who own these commercial properties that are blighted, that are posing a safety hazard to our community, that's bringing our real estate property down overall. Either they need to pay this additional fine tax, or they need to remedy their property, because it is truly bringing all of our property down. So that's really why, talking with Nathan, we have got to do something for these properties, and this is a way that we need to encourage either to get in compliance or help us solve the demolition problem by paying additional taxes. Thank you. That's it.
Commissioner Langstab?
I got a couple of questions. One is, have we only used this twice? I guess that's a question for Nathan.
I'm sorry.
Have we only applied the blight tax twice?
I believe there was a third case that we've only used it 3 times. It's just a question of, code inspecting them, and then we generate the paperwork. And so we haven't even done one recently. I would think the ones we're talking about were 5 years ago or more. Yes, sir.
Do we routinely, is it something that the municipal court judge has to assess? He has to find the property blighted before a blight tax is assessed?
That's exactly right. He has to sign an order finding it's blighted, and then we also are required to, and we do put in the order what will bring it out of a blighted status. And then the property owner, this ordinance provides the property owner then comes, I'll say, back to municipal court and shows that he or she or the corporation has complied with it, and then that would reduce it back to a normal state.
Are we routinely asking for the blight tax to be applied?
No, so we haven't done it in many years.
Why is that?
The abatement cases seem to be the ones that got more attention.
Huh. I mean, it seems like there's some that are just definitely blighted where the blight tax would fit, like Warvington's saying.
Oh, he's exactly right. You are too. Yeah, like one of the ones I think the Commissioner Warvington mentioned was a fairly attractive piece of property, value-wise maybe, because somebody's still paying taxes, good location, but they're just letting the structure itself has gone to a horrible state, and so that'll probably, if y'all enact this, approve this ordinance, my thought process is that'll be our poster child for moving forward with that one as soon as possible.
So it's not a question of the judge just hasn't decided that the properties are blighted. We just hadn't been asking for it.
That's correct. That's correct. The judge, yeah.
Well, I agree with Warvington that we need to be using it. The other question I got is there a maximum that you can multiply the tax by? I mean, I know right now it's a 3 times multiple, and we're talking about going to 6 times multiple. I just wondered if the law had some upper limit.
No, sir. I've thought for sure there would be, and I keep looking at it hard, and I haven't seen that there's a maximum amount. There is a provision for it has to be reduced if it's brought back, into an unblighted state. But there is, as far as I read it, there's no cap on. Like Commissioner Warvington said, you could go to 10 if you wanted to.
It is the way our ordinance reads. Does the judge have discretion as to how much blight tax to apply, or does he have to do would he have to do a 6 times multiple and that's it? It's either 0 or 6 times, or is there a sliding scale that he could do?
No, sir. He or she would be confined to the number in the ordinance, which
and that may be fine. I was just curious.
Good question. Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm in favor of trying both of it.
Thank you.
Sounds like the 3 times wasn't enough to get compliance. Maybe 6 will do it. Maybe it won't.
Hope so. Commissioner Warvington was right. The last one we did, the car dealership on Slappy, the property owner saw me in the hall and he asked what would be an effective penalty, and I said, well, 3 times the city millage rate, and he whipped out a calculator and hit some numbers on his calculator and said, well, tell the judge we don't have any defense, and politely walked out. So hopefully this will attract more interest. Thank you.
Nathan, wait, this is Commissioner Fletcher. I was with you when that happened.
That's right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wait. We'll come back to Commissioner Fletcher. Okay, Commissioner Langstaff, you finished?
Well, one final question I just asked of Nathan before we do. When does this come for final vote? Next month?
Yes, this would come up at the next regular meeting is going to be May 26th, I believe.
Just between now and then, Nathan, would you ask GMA just to make sure there's not some upper limit that we're missing somehow? Because it just seems weird that the sky's the limit you could charge.
Will do. Thank you.
Thanks. That's it. That's all I got.
Commissioner Young?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, back to Commissioner Fletcher.
Thank you. I was with Nathan when basically that gentleman laughed at us because his fine was a whole lot less than what it was going to cost for him to get it up to code. And if maybe we can look at, if we're going to double it to 6%, but if we could put 30 days to it, 60 days or whatever, and it just keeps doubling, it's going to give them the incentive to move on this. But the whole thing right now, they're doing the math, and it's absolutely cheaper for them to write out a check. Thank you.
Okay. Let me say, my concern on this is I expressed to Commissioner Warmington that it doesn't matter if we make it a multiplier of 10. If we're not going to enforce the ordinance, it doesn't mount to a row of pins. And I will support this, but I want to point out the failure of the city to enforce this ordinance is one reason we have the rampant slum and blight in this community. This ordinance was enacted to reduce slum and blight. And if you don't enforce the ordinance, then you might as well not have it. And what I would propose to do is that we identify properties, particularly commercial properties, which would fall within the category of properties which would be subject to the assessment. And let's get it into court and let's enforce this ordinance. Like I say, I'm not particularly supportive of doubling it because I don't think the reason people are not in compliance is because it's 3 times, because we just heard that the ordinance has only been enforced twice. But I will support it. It's been pointed out that the city's share of the millage rate is, I think, the smallest of the taxing authorities. And so you're not talking about 6 times the property tax, you're talking about 6 times the city's share. And with that, anybody else have any questions? Commissioner Warmington.
Y'all are all muted. You're muted.
All right, thank you, Bob. So just to be clear, and really for everybody listening, this blight tax is only for commercial property. It is not for residential property. It's not for property where people consider their residence. And so just in my investigation, most of the ones that I looked up, they are paying property taxes. They're not abandoned. They're not able to go through the land bank. So these folks are paying taxes, and it is commercial property that we're primarily looking at. Now there is 1 or 2 that's abandoned, and we know kind of who those are. But by and large, these are paying property taxes. The other thing I think the mayor just kind of mentioned that I've already talked to one county commissioner. There's nothing to say that the county can't do this and the school board can't do this same thing. So right now, this is only on the city portion of the tax, not on the county or the school board. One question I do have, Nathan, as I was thinking about this, even with the illustration you gave. So if we assess this 6 times, can the property owner just say, Okay, I'm done. Are there still things that we are working with them? Like, are we forcing them to keep it boarded? We're forcing them to keep it secure. We're keeping the grass cut. Those things are still in effect, even though they've been assessed at 6 times.
That's correct.
Like,
Yeah.
what does the owner have to do still, even though we're charging them 6 times their tax?
Well, it'll be outlined by the judge's order itself. And then also, if they're violating other code provisions, they're subject to what I call code cases also. In addition. And I double checked after we met, the school board is not included with authority to do that, just the city and the county. So your county colleagues could join in with a similar ordinance, and that would add a lot of teeth to it. Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Fuller, I think we passed you. Do you have anything to say on this issue?
Yes, can y'all hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry, I've had technical difficulties, so I apologize if you've discussed my question, but I heard a couple of times people say percentage, and then we've also talked about 6 times, but just to confirm, this would be 6 times the city tax that was due. Is that correct?
Whatever, y'all had the lowest of the 3 millage rates, and I think in the low 9s, but that would go on these properties up by 6 times that number. Yes, sir. Thanks for asking.
Okay, sure. And then, and you might have already addressed this as well, but what stage does this come in? I know we've had a lot of demolitions, and we're, moving towards some additional demolitions as we move forward this year. What stage does this come in where this tax would be imposed before we got to a demo?
As soon as the standards are listed in the ordinance itself, if it's is a little bit different from just repair type work or code work. Cases can be brought on these properties if they're vacant, being used for drug crimes, if they're unfit for any sort of commercial, industrial, or even a business use, or the broad phrase, if it endangers public health or safety due to unsanitary or unsafe conditions. So there's more leeway or broader things. You don't have to point out a specific thing like we do when we're talking about no heating, no air. Abatement cases are based on there's no HVAC system, there's no adequate plumbing, etc. So, hopefully the monetary end will catch everybody's attention, especially if your colleagues would join in on the county side and start seeking the same relief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. I would just ask the members of the commission to identify properties wherever they are in the city that might fall within this category and of blighted commercial properties, and let's get a list together within the next 30 days and let's move on them. I mean, I am insistent that if we're going to have this ordinance, we ought to enforce it. And so I would encourage each of you to provide addresses, and we'll find out whether or not they qualify, and we'll move forward if that's acceptable, Mr. Davis. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Reinstituting state of emergency.
Oh, no. I thought it was renaming facilities.
We have a third item under legal on the agenda.
Okay. As members of the commission know, since I think March 19th, there have been a series of declarations of state of emergency which were signed by the chairman of the county commission and myself. I have done my very best to keep the members of the commission apprised of what's been going on, the work of the task force, because I recognize that each of you have constituents that have questions, and I want to help you answer those questions. And as I have told each of you throughout this, I'm available. If you have any questions or concerns, you can notify me. What I do not want to do is just interminably extend this state of an emergency. I want to point out that under state law, it appears that the governor requires permission from the General Assembly before he or she can declare a state of emergency. Now, there's something in our city charter that says the mayor, with the consent of 2 commissioners, can declare a state of emergency. But we also have this provision, and Mr. Davis will speak on it later, that allows the mayor individually or with the chairman of the county commission to declare a state of emergency. I'm not that familiar with it because the 8 years I was on the commission, there never was a state of emergency. My concern about that is that the commission is not really involved in that decision. And here, I mentioned what the state law requires the General Assembly to consent or approve the state of emergency. The city commission doesn't have that authority. Also, under state law, the state of emergency can't last for more than 30 days without being extended by the General Assembly. And under our ordinance, there's no limit on how long the state of emergency can last. I think that this ordinance needs to be amended. I look at other, like Savannah is much more detailed, and obviously has been amended since 1992 when it was enacted. And I would just ask Mr. Davis to give us an overview of our ordinance and the state law. And granted, we need to understand the governor can declare a state of emergency, but also there's a statute that allows local elected officials to declare a state of emergency in their jurisdictions. So with that, Mr. Davis, if you'd give us some overview, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, I had a chance to look at the history, and the Emergency Management Agency here was established first in 1992 in Ordinance 92-111 and was amended in 1998 under Ordinance 98-147. If you look in the, these are over in Title 26 of the City Code, and if you look when it was amended in 98, it added some new, it lists who's going to participate, and then it lists various functions, and it added the utility, what we would call the utility board, to furnish utility services. Albany Transit would furnish transportation services, and the American Red Cross. The school superintendent, which had been a part of the original ordinance, that position was dropped from the city ordinance, which our company that does the code in Tallahassee has codified all this in section 26 of the city code. And as far as emergency management, in the state law, what the government operates under is in Title 38, which also refers to local governments having certain powers that they can issue rules and regulations as necessary to carry out the state law. The key phrase in the state code is that actions, the state doesn't usurp the entire arena, but the state law does require that any local rules or regulations not be inconsistent with the emergency declarations of the governor. But that still doesn't mean that y'all cannot issue and call for an emergency if you want to. So that's kind of a brief rundown. I can answer any other questions that might come up about it, but that's kind of the history behind the two ordinances that have passed and set up the Albany-Daugherty Emergency Management Agency.
Mayor Pro Tem, you have any questions? Commissioner Fuller, you have any questions?
No, sir.
Commissioner Fletcher?
No, sir.
Commissioner Warmington?
Yeah, I got one question for Nathan. So, so the city has their EMA ordinance, and then the county has theirs. Are they independent? Are they connected?
They're joint ordinances. Yes, sir.
Okay.
The county, if I can the county has a different ordinance that says the fire chief will be the EMA director. We don't have that, but we don't, there are legal requirements as to what the EMA director has to get continuing education, and I don't know if we've been enforcing that, but we need to.
So looking at the city code, there's no mention of city commissioners. It's all county commissioners. Is there a reason why city commissioners? Like 26-3? It just says Board of Commissioners
No, I think it says chairman, comma, board of commission.
of Doherty County.
Yeah.
Okay, chairman of the, well, okay. Okay, that's the only question I had.
Okay, Commissioner Langstaff?
No question.
Okay, and Commissioner Young?
Yeah, the question I had was there any changes to this ordinance during the other emergencies we had with the tornadoes? I was under the impression that that had happened.
It looks like 98 was the last time any action was taken, isn't that correct? Yes, sir.
Okay, so no changes since 98? Okay, that's the only question I had.
Okay, and again, Ms. Subadan, did you have something to say?
Yes, I just wanted to affirm that the EMA director, fire chief, is engaging in considerable amounts of EM continuing education.
Well, that's good. I was surprised that the statute requires like 24 hours a year. It's pretty strenuous. I thought a little bit much, but I'm glad to hear that. But I think the commissioners ought to also be aware of that requirement. And like I said, I wrote y'all a letter. Any suggestions y'all might have as to the specific purpose and responsibility of the EMA, the governor's executive order is in place, and it will expire if it's not rescinded prior to then on May 13th. I don't know what the situation in Albany and Doherty County will be, but there might be a consideration of reinstating a state of emergency. Hopefully that won't be necessary, but between now and then, if you or any of you have any recommendations or suggestions, or just want to talk about what's been going on, y'all have my number, and I'd be glad to listen to what you have to say. With anybody else have any comments? With that, that was just for information purposes. Madam Clerk, next item. Okay. And
Don't forget to unmute.
me? Madam Clerk?
I can't hear you, Sharon.
We can hear you. We can hear you now.
Okay. The next item is remaining facilities.
Okay. Mr. Holmes, available?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, Mr. Holmes, you want to update us on the Carver Park situation?
Yes, the last I saw, there's an email where we have formed a committee to review this request, but have not met yet. But we do have a committee. I think Commissioner Fletcher is leading that, and she may can speak on that as well.
Okay. Well, we'll let Mr. Hamilton speak, then Commissioner Fletcher can speak on both. Is Mr. Hamilton available? Mr. Hamilton. Okay. Now, can we ask Commissioner Fletcher to give us an update? Commissioner Fletcher? Have we lost Commissioner Fletcher?
Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. I can. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I have been in touch with Frank Wilson, which is headed up the Ola Mae Quarterman project. He is in rehab. He's got about 6 more weeks to go. Plus, he is respecting the fact of what's going on. I'm in communication with him. He knows about tonight. So we will resume when it's all over on those talks. I've been talking to Judge Driscoll. She also is up to speed on what we're doing. Very proud of what we're doing, but she understands the situation that we're in. She also knows about tonight, and that's where we're at with both situations.
Thank you, Commissioner Fletcher. And
thank you, sir.
When things resume to normal, I hope we can move forward on these two items.
All righty.
Okay. Does anybody have any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem, any questions? Oh. Commissioner Fuller?
No, sir.
Commissioner Worthington? Commissioner Langstaff?
No.
Commissioner Young?
No, sir.
And with that, Madam Clerk, the next item, Public Administration and Finance Matters. And who will be speaking on this item, please?
One thing I think we're running into is that you have to hit, you haven't spoken in a while, it seems like you have to hit *6 to be able to unmute is the way I'm having to do it if anybody's running into the same problem.
Can y'all hear me? Okay. All right. I thought Matt was saying.
No, I think Matt's on the telephone. So
okay.
If you're on the telephone.
Yes, I'm doing it from a telephone instead of the computer.
Okay. All right. Is Ms. Fields gonna speak to this?
Yes, I am, sir.
Good evening, Ms. Fields.
Good evening.
Yes, ma'am.
This was a bid for renovating Bill Miller and Henderson gyms for a lump sum of $470,068.55 each, which would make a total expenditure of $940,137.10. We received 2 bids, and the low bid came from LRA, and they added an additional incentive for awarding both projects of 5% discount, and that figure has already been deducted from the total expenditure I just mentioned. So I'm available for any questions.
Okay, if we could start with Commissioner Young, since both these facilities in Ward 6.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to make sure that these 2 particular projects are already in the budgeted phase, so we already have this money allocated.
As far as I'm aware, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. These are SPLOST 7 projects, and we will have to carry this expenditure over to fiscal 21, but we are anxious to go ahead and get the award going. This has been a long time coming. I feel like we did well on the the bids that have been received, so I'm excited to see these projects move forward.
And one of the both of these gyms are pretty heavily used. Did we get any input from the community on just how these renovations were supposed to take place and what the community wanted?
We didn't host community meetings, but we did speak with those who use the gym, those who work in the gym especially, and those who provide services there. And overwhelmingly, what they said is they wanted their gym to be like Thornton, and that's how we're bidding it. That's how we have bid it, and that's our expectation of what it will be like when it's finished.
Okay, so are we past the stage where we could probably seek some more input from the community, not necessarily to change any, construction designs or anything, but just maybe, some things? Because I actually looked at Bill Miller Center, and one of the things that I would like to see is a way, I know we want to think about security and everything, but a way to maybe remove that back fence, because that back fence basically makes the gym cut off from, any, anybody who wants to come or walk to the gym from that side. And it just, in my estimation, just needs to be, kind of a more open landscape thing, and in that kind of park area, to give it kind of more of an open feel for the neighborhood, instead of just like we're throwing up a big chain link fence. So, it just feels kind of unwelcoming with that fence on the back side of the gym.
We certainly can get with you and with the community on some of the suggestions. This bid is specifically for the building. Typically when we get ready to, or get closer to the finished product, we do an entire exterior landscaping effort, signage and things like that. So I think there's a balance between providing security for the kids that use the gym and making it welcoming. So definitely that is something that we can do. We can also meet with the community and show them our plans and get some input in terms of aesthetics that are can be tailored specifically to a community. If there's a desire to do that, we have no problem with doing that at all.
And also for Henderson Gym, there's of course a lot of basketball that's played there. D'Antonio Wingfield has a basketball program there. And is it possible for us to add the idea that you had, city manager, for the outdoor courts at that particular location?
I think when part of today's meeting is to talk about the overall recreation budget, and we have set aside some funding that we've reallocated from other projects for your consideration in terms of what it is you think you might want. Because I've heard that Carver, covered basketball at Carver, as well as now this location, as well as, other locations. So it'll be good for us to get your feedback on what it is you think you'd prefer, and then we can go from there.
Okay. And what's the, timetable for construction? When we'll start?
Yvette, did you give them a time frame on this?
Ms. Field?
The time for each project is 180 days.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. That's it, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Young. Mayor Pro Tem, any questions?
Okay.
Go
Can
ahead.
you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
The only concern I have is from playing basketball at the rubberized floor. They are certainly not the best floor, because when you talk about traction, things of that nature, it is prone to have a lot of accidents on, but that's the only thing. That those rubberized floors are not the best floors to use when folks want to play basketball.
Any other questions?
That's it.
Commissioner Fuller?
Yes, sir. I'm excited about seeing both of these projects move forward. One question I had, and not questioning LRA constructors' ability to figure this out, but in the scope of work, it mentions that they would spot prime and then do 2 coats of paint on the block exterior. And I know that block hasn't been painted in a long time. I would suggest that maybe we employ the product provider, the Sherwin-Williams, Lowe's, whoever's going to provide the product, and have them determine should we be priming the entire surface. To me, it seems like that would be the right application. I could be wrong, but I would like to see that looked at, because I'm afraid if we don't prime that block right, we'll have the paint peeling off in a short time, and we want this to last us a long time.
Thank you, Commissioner Fuller. Any other questions?
No, sir, not for me.
Ms. Field, if we could make a note of what Commissioner Fuller has recommended, and certainly we want to address that, because we don't need to get in a situation where we spend $1 million on these two facilities and they're not what they could and should have been. So I mean, I appreciate that, Commissioner Fuller. Commissioner Fletcher.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
You know, I've seen projects where, like Sherwin-Williams especially, that Commissioner Fuller has talked about, when we pull them in and we make them part of this project, they have to guarantee their work. So that might be something for us to consider, to guarantee the paint. If they become part of that project, they have to guarantee that paint. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Warburton.
Yeah, so in terms of programming, what is currently happening at both facilities? Do we have after-school programs at both facilities now?
Well, we don't have anything right now.
Well, yeah.
But both of these are pretty actively used. If you want a list of everything, we've provided that to you all before. Joel is on the phone, and he can either speak to it now or in the workshop of what programs we have at both of these sites. But they are pretty well used. And one of the things I want to be sure of with LRA is that they schedule things so that we try to work around the programs as best we can, so we don't disrupt the ability for the gyms to be used. There will be a period of time where we probably will have to close, but we want to minimize that as much as possible. But I'll turn it over to Joel if he has the specifics on hand.
Yes, like Ms. Huban said, they are very active, and we will, of course, work with contractors to work around our activities. And we do have a list of activities, like she'd mentioned, we provided before. We'll be glad to provide again. I actually have an updated document that we're working on now. We can go into detail with that at the end of the agenda when we get to it, or we can do it now. And I can certainly, and I will follow up either way with a written follow-up on programs and things like that, so you all will have a written hard copy of programming that's ongoing, what's leave the pandemic, and also what future programs are planned.
Right. So I guess as leaders, I mean, we need to be a step ahead. So, I would hope that these both facilities are going to recruit a lot of kids, because it's going to be a better facility. It's going to look nicer, so you should have a better turnout after school. One thing that I do know happens at Thornton Gym is they have a good number of senior citizens that use it during the day. I don't know if these two facilities currently attract senior citizens, like for pottery and some other things. But the times I've been to Thornton Gym, it's busy during the day. And so, again, I don't know if those are plans for this. And then, of course, we already talked about some of the other recreational. Hey, one technical question I had, and I didn't see it in the scope of work. Will both of these gyms be heated and cooled, completely heated and cooled?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, I saw where they're removing louvers and fans and stuff, and I just want to make sure that they're completely heated and cooled, the gym and the entire facility. Okay.
Commissioner Langstaff?
I have nothing.
Okay, my turn. I just, over at Bill Miller, I do think Commissioner Young was talking about the backside, but I just want us to improve ingress and egress. I don't know if we have enough parking over there, but certainly to make that more appealing, so it's something that the people in the neighborhood and the city of Albany can be proud of. I mean, it's I'm not saying it's unsightly, but it's hardly even visible from the road. And I think this is an opportunity for us to improve the appearance. I personally thought that these two facilities had outlived their usefulness, but I can tell you that I was quite impressed with what was done over at Thornton, and it's my understanding that we're going to use the same these buildings all have the same blueprint, correct? All three gyms.
Yeah, the original blueprint for the gyms is actually the same. Bill Miller and Henderson had actually built out their mezzanines. Thornton, we had to build it. And so they will look similar. They will not look exactly the same, but they will look similar. And the original footprint blueprint was the same.
Will they have that extension that is like a entry that they have at Thornton?
I do not believe we programmed the extension. That was something specifically that Boys and Girls Club had wanted and needed. That would be a question for Yvette, but I do not believe we programmed the addition at the other two gyms.
How much was that addition?
I'd have to go back and pull that information for you, sir. It was significant,
okay.
But it definitely changed the look of the something that did in adding. It was a requirement because of the way Boys and Girls Club checks in the children. The other gyms have a little bit of a different process. But Yvette, I don't believe we did that addition, did we?
Okay. No, we didn't program the addition on there.
Can we see how much that was, just for information?
I can look it up. I won't have it today. I can have it for you later.
Okay, no rush. I mean, we're not going to bid on it. I was just thinking if we already had the plans. I mean, what it does from the exterior, it doesn't look quite like a barn, a metal building. It really looks like a facility. And then obviously the I guess the safety measures that Boys and Girls Club are implementing to document who comes in and comes out, and that is not a bad idea for any facility where you're having youth being served. And so I would just like to look at that if we could.
Sure, we can do that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments regarding these proposed renovations at Bill Miller and Henderson gyms? Oh, I would like to say one thing. From here on out, I think we need to do these have community meetings. I think it's as important to know why people are not using a facility as why people, asking the opinions of people who do use the facility. And because we want as many people looking at that master plan from 2006. I think it said only less than 25% of the people involved in it used a recreational facility in the previous year. And I think, and that was pointed out, that is a little bit below the national average. So one thing we need to do is let's get people involved who don't have outlets and maybe could utilize these facilities. But with that, Madam Clerk, the next item on the agenda.
That is transit and transportation planning fund.
Good evening, everyone. This is Paul Forgy. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hear you.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
This is an annual request from the Doherty Area Regional Transportation Study, the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization. This is a request that requires approval by the Mayor and City Commission in order to receive funding from the Federal Transit Administration and the Federal Highway Administration for transit planning funds and transportation planning funds. And there's a breakdown of the funds we receive, or that we would receive, in your agenda packets. This is an annual request that funds both planning in my department in the transportation planning, and also in David Hamilton's department for transit planning. If you have questions or want more detail, I can provide that to you.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, any questions for Mr. Forgy? Mr. Fuller, any questions for Mr. Forgy?
No, sir.
Commissioner Fletcher, any questions for Mr. Forgy?
No, sir.
Commissioner Worthington?
No, sir.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No.
Commissioner Young?
No, sir.
Mr. Forgy, I would like to get with you and go over this thing. So are you in Thomasville you're not working in, are you coming to Albany at all?
I am avoiding it as much as I can, but I have been up a few times, and I'm happy to meet with you anytime you want.
Okay, I would like to kind of sit down with you and go over this thing, and I got some questions. What is the what do you think is the prospects of being approved for this grant?
Oh, 100%. We get this annually, and we've received it since the 60s.
But I mean, you're not going to get the whole $9 million, do you think?
Oh no, we're on the item before that. This is a request for, one item is 151,000 and one is 63,000, and we will receive that.
Oh, don't you think I know that? Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay. Any further issue? Now we're on the street. Okay. I apologize.
That's all right.
Next item, Madam Clerk.
Build grant.
Okay.
Okay.
Forgy?
Thank you. This is the next item, the BUILD grant. BUILD stands for Better Utilizing Investments to Leverage Development, and it's a transportation discretionary grant through the U.S. Department of Transportation. This is a big opportunity to get quite a bit of money, and we are proposing to use this to apply for money to complete 10 sidewalk improvement projects throughout the city. There's a variety of projects all around the city that are being proposed, including Broad Avenue. The deadline for this application is May 18th, and I need to note that the information provided on the agenda is the amount that we're requesting is incorrect. The project, this is in draft form. We're still putting this together, but the numbers that we are looking at, the total project would be $12,424,798, which would require a 20% match from the city of Albany, equaling $2,484,959. And if you'd like me to go over the 10 projects, I can do that. It is in the information that was sent to you.
Okay, could you, let's go over it. I think we need to understand what all's involved here.
Okay, so as I said, there's 10 different projects. The first project is Lockett Station Road, and that would be done in 2 phases. It's about 8,200 feet of sidewalk that goes from Gillionville to Brook Hollow Parkway. And project 2 is Radium Springs Road. This is going to be done or proposed in 3 phases, extending 8,600 feet of sidewalk from East Oglethorpe to the north to East Oak Ridge on the south. And project 3 is Broad Avenue, and the 3 phases of this would extend sidewalk about 17,000 feet from Mock Road on the east, and it would go under the railroad underpass and end at South Broadway Street. Then there's a Mock Road.
Excuse me,
Certainly.
Mr. Forgy.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Howard has a question, if he could interrupt.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
On this East Broad Avenue, this probably was a question from Ms. Suberdan, that in SPLOST 7, we had some funds that was going to start from the school coming back toward the river. So Ms. Suberdan, do you know who that project is going to be let out?
That project is in design, and I don't think we have actually put those out to bid yet. But I believe my last report, they said they were close to 80% complete on all of the sidewalks that were previously approved by the board.
Okay, you said 80%?
Complete with design.
Okay.
For the list.
And that's the East Broad Avenue, right?
For that small section, correct.
Okay. Can you keep us abreast that when it will be the design phase will be completed and will be let out for bid?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that, Mayor.
No, Ms. Forgy?
Okay. And I do want to clarify also that the Broad Avenue project would go all the way to Walmart. It
Yes,
doesn't
sir.
Mock Road. The next project, Project 4, is North and South Mock Road, and this would be done in 2 phases, extending the sidewalk 5,100 feet from Clark Avenue on the north to Briarwood Drive on the south. The next project is on Vic Street, and this would extend sidewalk 2,300 feet from East Oglethorpe Drive to Patrol Drive. And then Project 6 is Meadowlark Drive, extending sidewalk 1,850 feet from Gillianville Road to Albany State University West Campus. Project 7 is Magnolia Street, and this would extend sidewalk on Magnolia 3,800 feet from Dawson Road to Gillianville Road on the south. The next project, Project 8, is 14th Avenue. This would extend 2,700 feet of sidewalk from Seaboard Drive to Slappy Boulevard. Project 9 is Rosebriar, Library Lane, Massey Drive, and Georgia Drive. This would extend sidewalk 3,800 feet along those roadways. Project 10 is around the Transportation Center, which is of course located on Oglethorpe and also includes the Harlem area. And this would be this would be a little bit bigger than just sidewalks strictly. It would include striping and signage and crosswalks and additional streetscape features. So the rest of them are primarily just sidewalk projects, but the Transportation Center and the Harlem Project 10 is a little bit more of a streetscape project. And that's all of the projects we're looking at. We prioritize these based on connecting schools and areas that people walk, trying to make the best of connections that we could enhance throughout the city.
Mayor, could I add on to that?
Yes, ma'am.
You had asked earlier, what are our chances?
I lost Ms. Subadan. Did y'all lose Ms. Subadan?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
I think I hit the mute by mistake. This is not the first, you asked about whether or not what our chances would be. This is not our first application. This is the 3rd time we'll be applying for the build grant. Typically what happens is they give you an out briefing so you can make your next year's application stronger. Last year, there was no project awarded in Georgia in the build. So we're very hopeful that this year they will smile at Georgia. We are taking the information from the granting agency to help make our applications stronger. And of course, we've already gotten our lobbyists preparing letters of support from our delegation to submit along with the community letters to submit with the package that is due, I believe, on the 18th.
Okay. Questions, Mayor Pro Tem?
Ms. Subadan.
Yes, sir.
So we need to be very careful about what we're saying, that we probably get this grant. We probably just need to not say anything to the public, right?
Well, this is a public meeting.
But I mean, I shouldn't go out there tonight be a cheerleader saying that we got this money and we're going to see that's going to happen. So I need to use some conservative idea.
Yeah, I think what we are trying to do is leverage our local dollars. We're going to take our $2 million, and if this is successful, we'll get $12 million in sidewalks, which is a good thing for the community. If we are unable to be successful, we'll look at other opportunities, or we may just build sidewalks with the funding that we have available and try again. The granting agencies will tell you, it's the persistent who succeed. So if you don't get approved in the first or second round, they encourage you to apply again.
Okay.
Commissioner Fuller?
Years or 2 years since I've been on the commission, it achieving grants and getting these done. So if we could leverage this into a $12 million project with us putting up 2.4 million, then I think it's great. Let's do our best to get it done.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Fletcher? Commissioner Fletcher? Commissioner Worthington?
I don't have anything.
Commissioner Langstaff?
If we do get the grant, will it be awarded by project?
You know, that's a good question. Most of these, as you know, are on a reimbursement basis. So as we lay out the schedule and we start to do the work, we submit our invoices. They reimburse us on a 80-20 basis. So, you know, grants, they don't just hand you money. You do the work, you submit your invoices, you get reimbursed for it. And they usually do that in a very fast time frame.
I guess what I'm saying is of all the projects, you've got them numbered. They could pick some that they want to fund and not others, right?
They could, you know, that would be unusual. But as you saw with the TAP grant, they chose to just give us funding for engineering and no money to actually construct. We have to come back for that. So they have a lot of latitude on how they award the projects. And to answer your question, yes, you know, they could go through and look at our application and pick some and not others. That is correct.
And I guess the other thing is they could just award a particular dollar amount and just say, let's say they gave us half the funding we requested. Would you bring it back to us to decide which of the projects to do?
Absolutely. And the other part of it is, you know, we make estimates. If we estimate that this is what it's going to be, and when we actually go out to bid, the number is higher, we would have to come back to you anyway and go back to the granting agency as well in order to get direction on how they would want us to proceed.
And I guess what I want to make sure is that the numbers of the projects, that's not some sort of priority order. That's just how we happen to number them, right?
That would be a question for Paul.
Well, I think it all depends, but no, I don't. I think there will be flexibility, but it, you know, we've seen it both ways with different funders, and it's quite possible that we will be pretty much stuck with what we submit.
Well, what I'm getting at is if we only get partial funding, I don't want some commissioners to think, oh, well, if we only got the funding for project one, we're just doing, you know, enough money to do project one and half of project two, that's where we're stopping. It might make more sense to just do the sidewalks near schools, for example, for safety reasons. You know, I mean, we may need to pick and choose which ones we're doing.
Right. I think we would work with you all to come up with, I mean, there's a lot of unknowns, of course. If they were to come back and say we're funding this partially, we would work with you all to find, we would suggest the priority segments of the sidewalks to complete. And I think, I mean, I agree with you, safety would be the primary reason, and they may even dictate that we would have to prioritize them based on safety concerns.
Okay.
Well, that's kind of a happy problem, you know. I think we're getting into speculation. If we get the money, we can worry about that. Commissioner Young.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, have we done any work in terms of figuring out, you know, the I guess a walkability score? And for those, that's one of my little nerd public administration terms, and figuring out where you need to put sidewalks and how much benefit you're going to get out of them for the community. Because I know, you know, of course, in my ward, there are, places where people can walk, for up to a mile and not see a sidewalk. And they, this is an area where people don't have cars, so you have people who walk in the streets, people who are in wheelchairs who have to ride their wheelchairs in the streets. So I guess my question is have we done any study in terms of the walkability of the neighborhoods that we're trying to put these sidewalks in?
We have, but it's not recent. We do have a bike and pedestrian plan that included a lot of that information, and we are looking at redoing that plan in the upcoming year or so. So we don't have any current figures, but we do have some good guesses on problem areas.
Okay, I'd like to work with you on that, if I could, Mr. Forgy, because that's a big issue in our community, and of course with poor health outcomes of our entire city. We really need to think about what we can do to just entice citizens to walk more, put things or design a community that people feel safe, people feel enticed to get out and walk more, not just have to go to a walking track, but that could just be part of their daily routine.
We'd love to have you on the steering committee. Any way you want to help, we'd appreciate the input, and I'll send you the current plan.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Young. Ms. Forgy, I would like, if we could just sit down with you, and I'd like to go through this with you, just if you got 15, 20 minutes when you're in town, if you'd give me a call, I'd appreciate it.
Certainly.
Sir? Madam Clerk, next item. Okay. Madam City Manager.
I didn't hear the clerk. The budget workshop, are we ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sorry. So as we did with public safety, blight and crime, we've provided you with outline of our suggested budget, which will be presented the second workshop meeting in May. But Joel is on the line to speak to programming. The biggest, I think, change is additional funding for programming, as well as some areas where we've identified SPLOST funding that can be moved into recreation. And as I said earlier, we've only identified the Carver Pool, which was a SPLOST 7 item very specifically laid out, and the funding for Bill Miller and Henderson. And so we are anxious to get feedback from you. We are finalizing the Carver Pool consultant RFP, which that'll be coming out for you to review before we put that on the street. So that's going to be your priority, the results of that finding. That could be something to do. Additionally, next meeting, which is next Tuesday, we will have an outline on SPLOST and T-SPLOST for you to show you what we have accrued in both funds, what has been spent, what we suggest for fiscal 21, and some other areas where we potentially can reallocate funding. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Joel so that he can speak to the programming aspect. And Derek is on the line as well for specific questions as it relates to how the budget has been appropriated for your review.
Yes, hey, this is Joel Holmes. Good evening. Like Ms. Huberdine said, we've given you some paperwork to show kind of the plans we have, and we're looking forward to hearing feedback from you tonight to help provide some more direction for us. As Ms. Sugan mentioned, we do have some increases to help us to add programming. There's money increase to add some equipment. We've got some dilapidated equipment in the gym, so we're looking at adding ping pong tables, foosball tables, pool tables, computer equipment, those type of things to help us provide better programming to the youth and adults and seniors in our community. Youth programming wise, one thing we're going to focus on, and we kind of touched on that a little bit tonight, is seeking more community input. We're looking to form a teen council. We're looking to do teen summits to really hear from our teenagers and young people. And then we're also looking to hear from the citizens in general around our facilities. We do have some neighborhood watch programs in our gyms, but our goal in the coming months is to have neighborhood watch program in every recreation gym and facility that we have. So I'll be glad to answer questions if you want to get more specific. And like I said, I look forward to hearing your input and feedback.
Mayor Pro Tem.
These major project with Bill Miller, Jeff Street Boys Club, and Carver pool renovation. Are you there?
Yes.
So we don't have an exact date when we start with the Carver pool renovation, do we? Or has it been put up a big bid?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's it.
Mr. Fuller.
When we're going to be spending these kind of dollars, let's get the input.
Mr. Fuller.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
We caught you in mid-sentence.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. No, we could hear you, but we caught you in mid-sentence. If you could start over, please.
Sure. I was just saying, I do like the idea of let's get some input when we're talking about spending these dollars of the best way to spend these dollars when we're talking about recreation. So I just want to be mindful of what we're doing when we do go out to do these projects. So I want everybody to input in their ward and let's some things are outdated and we should probably not be rehabbed or we should look at do we want to put more money into that or we want to do something new or what we want to do. So I would say I'm excited about moving this forward, but let's just be conscious of what we're doing with the dollars.
Thank you. Commissioner Fletcher.
I'm going to second what Commissioner Fuller says. We can move forward with a lot of these projects, but I would like to really pay close attention to the money to make sure that they're getting exactly what they need in each community. Each community is different. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Worthington.
Yeah, Joel, just looking at the breakdown of expenses, looks like one of your large areas of increases is in wages. Are you bringing on more people? You increasing staffing? Like what exactly does that entail?
We're not adding any new positions. We had some positions that were unfilled that we're getting filled, and then we're also adding in a little bit in our part-time wages. Again, to add programs, we're going to need staff to help run those programs and increase our numbers. Obviously, the gyms are open more than 40 hours a week, so we're going to have part-time help for weekend and evening coverages. But no, we're not adding any new positions.
Okay, so after school programs, as I think across the city, we have I don't want to say inconsistent, but some facilities has very robust programs, some facilities don't. We actually have one partnership with Robert Cross Middle School where the city and the county or the school system partner in that facility. Do we have any other plans to continue to give places for kids to go after school, for adults, mentors? Does any of this include, I don't know how many kids we, are involved in after school program, but whatever it is, it needs to be more. We need to have more opportunities for kids. So Could you speak to any expansion in terms of afternoon programs?
Right. I'll give you two things. That's a great question. Obviously with the pandemic we're in right now, we were already negotiating and beginning talks with the school system. We're wanting, as you mentioned, we have a great program at Robert Frost, and we were looking to expand that in other facilities. But obviously with schools being out right now, it kind of slowed the progress on that. But we'll certainly resume that when the time's appropriate. And also, as we mentioned earlier tonight, the renovations to our gyms, I feel like it's going to be a big plus for us to be able to attract more parents to have interest in sending their kids to after-school programs. Once these gyms are renovated and have the attractive look and have the modern aesthetics to it, we think that's going to help us attract more people to be more comfortable about sending their kids to our gyms and seeing what we have going on. So there's a couple of areas there that we think is really going to help us thrive and grow our after-school program.
Okay. And Sharon, I would ask you, so right now for our after-school program, really the Boys and Girls Club is the only entity we partner with, or, and some facilities they run exclusively, some they run partnership with us. Do you see going down the road the next year or two expanding to have more partnerships either with other entities or even with that entity to have more involvement from outside companies like that?
I think so. One of the things that we actually had pulled together names to put together sort of a working group with the school system and the nonprofits just before this happened to kind of inventory what the need was, because we know the school system provides a significant amount of after school care. The Boys and Girls Club, we're doing some. So we wanted to figure out, is there a gap and where's the gap? Because one of the challenges with after school that's not at a school is transportation. So if, for example, we did an after school program at one of our gyms, we would also need to partner with the school system on transporting the kids so that they can get to our program, or we would have to provide the transportation for the kids to get to our program. So we actually have started those conversations and we'll continue those conversations. The school system is doing a lot and have some established relationships, but we're also wanting to give kids opportunities to do things that are different. So it may not be sports, it may be an arts program, or it may be, something that's a STEM program. But what we need to know is where are the gaps, so that we can provide programming that meets the need instead of just having another run-of-the-mill program.
Okay. Well, one other question. I know the last several years, there's a lot of talk in the community about these travel tournaments. I didn't see any indication of, are we still trying to recruit these tournaments, whether it's traveling baseball or, I just didn't see that highlighted as something we're focusing on.
Well, what we've done is the CVB has a sports and marketing committee, and they work closely with us on marketing our venues to try to see how we can get, especially travel baseball here. We've continued to invest in Paul Eames to make it playable and make it attractive, so that if we have that opportunity, or if they see that opportunity, we are able to bid on bringing those tournaments to our community. So that's kind of where that effort is lying. I will tell you that I'm excited about Burt Bacon has become part of our team and really very quickly spun up a lot of interest in additional athletics. I think our kids were scheduled to go to Savannah to play in a playoff tournament for basketball, I think girls basketball, just before the pandemic, and it got canceled. So I'm very optimistic that when we come out of this crisis, we're going to see a lot more kids participating, especially on the athletic side, and not just kids, but kids and youth.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No comments.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Young?
Yes, sir. Mr. Holmes, I just wanted to ask, what are your plans in terms of marketing your programs. Early on, I had some conversations with the city manager, and I just kind of always felt that, you know, where we were missing the mark was basically marketing, you know, our recreational opportunities to the community. And I just wanted to see if we had plans for, you know, some type of robust marketing that would, you know, bring those kids and those, you know, even, you know, for adult sports into the recreational facilities. And even, I think, you know, I know it's, you know, right now it's probably a little bit early for this, but, you know, I anticipate that because of the pandemic and because of what we know is our situation in terms of again, health outcomes here in the city, that we need to branch out into not just recreation, but also wellness programs that, you know, will help our citizens, you know, be healthier and be, you know, where we could have them go and get a prescription for some exercise. You know, the doctor could, you know, have them go to a recreational facility and you know, your prescription is to walk, you know, for 15 minutes a day, and then be able to do that at a low cost, because, you know, I know the YMCA is, as an example, you know, their program is centered around not just sports, but also wellness. And I would like to see the recreation department kind of move toward that type of model. And I know that's not going to happen overnight, but I'd just like to know that we're having some thought in that vein and are going in that direction.
Yeah, yes, sir. I'll speak to both of those points. As far as the marketing, you're correct. That's something that we see that we need to improve. And actually, a month or so ago, right before the pandemic really hit, my recreation management team actually met with the PIO team. We actually hosted them for lunch at the golf course and met with them for probably at least 2 hours to kind of really talk to them about our programs and come up with strategies on how we could better market, how we could start doing some videos to highlight some programs and some of our young people and some of our senior citizen programs. So that's something we were working on. Obviously, that's kind of slowed down with what's going on in our community right now with the coronavirus, but that's something we'll certainly resume with the PIO team. We actually have a talented individual on staff here in recreation now that's got a good background with marketing and flyers, and she works closely with Monique and her team with our flyers and promotions as well. So that's something I think you'll certainly see continue to improve as we move forward. As far as health and wellness, that's another good point. We actually in recreation have a health and wellness division. And I like what you mentioned, because we actually met with the City of Albany, the employee clinic that we all utilize. We actually met with staff there about doing exactly what you said, about having them prescribe, you know, so many minutes of walking in a park, things like that. Of course, there'll have to be follow through from the patient for that, but that is something we've actually already initiated conversations on, working with our local providers. And we've also worked with Phoebe in the past with our health and wellness division and done several programs in the last year, and we're looking to do nothing but grow those programs and opportunities with Phoebe. We've looked into some wellness clinics, some health fairs, those kind of things in our facilities and gyms. And again, once we kind of get open back up, you'll see those programs expand and grow and become more visible as well. So I certainly appreciate both comments you made, and I think we're on the right track with you on that.
Okay. And are you doing any maybe any partnerships or any opportunities to work with Albany State Human and Physical Performance department over there?
Sure, we reached out to them and had some communications. We work with Albany State with different tournaments and things we host, so we're certainly looking to grow that partnership as well.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
Is that all, Commissioner Young? Yeah, Mr. Holmes, did you get my letter?
I did, sir.
When you gonna get me some responses on this?
We got just about most of them answered now. We're working on that through this afternoon. I've got most of the things you asked for. We're just kind of finalizing. I didn't want to give you an incomplete document, but I would say certainly by the end of this week at the latest, we'll have you everything you had.
That's good. Do we have a 2006 master plan? Was there ever a master plan, or was the draft the last thing you have?
I actually have it. I noticed in the letter you asked for the 7 copies, and we have those finishing up today. By tomorrow, I'll have those copies available.
And so those, we do have a final, what I had was just a draft. So you've got a final. Is that correct?
I've got, now that was of course before I became an employee in Albany, but we do have a binder that is labeled as Recreation Master Plan. Ours is not a draft, so we do, and I know you mentioned there were some pages missing in what you had, and we do have those missing pages. So we have a complete set.
Okay, all right. Well, here is, I think these gyms, of course, one thing, I see you have these divisions. Do you ever reassign employees from one division to the other, like, you follow me?
Yes, sir. We do, and even though they're in divisions, we don't, we're strict with that, but not as far as opportunity allows. I mean, if we have an employee that's in one division but has a certain skill set, we certainly cross-train those in other divisions, and we work as a team. So it may be a health and wellness program, but we're also running the program in our gym. So our gyms and centers division is going to be involved. But from time to time, there's positions that come open, and an employee may move from division to division, and sometimes it may just be a better fit for someone, and we do move them laterally within divisions when the opportunity presents itself to give us some growth.
Well, no, I was really talking about, say, in the fall when things are slow down at the golf course, but then if we can revitalize the youth sports, if we had, do you have anybody from the golf course that would work with youth football?
Not necessarily from golf course, but that does happen. We do have some staff in our centers and gyms and health and wellness that do help, like you mentioned, when it's slower times for their areas, we will reassign them and they'll assist other divisions. So we do that with each division. Like I said, they help each other. We're all one team. So depending on the season and what's going on, one division may be a little bit busier than the other ones. So we, of course, pitch in and help out, and everybody works together.
Okay, well, I mean, I think, I just want us to try to maximize the efficiency, and I see that throughout the city where you have departments and divisions that we're not being as efficient as we could be. But I appreciate it. I do want to say this. These gyms are a resource. I mean, if we can work with Dougherty County school system with after school programs, these kids are going to perform better in schools. I mean, I think I had always had the idea that Turner and Carver Gym, Henderson and Thornton, Lockett Station, we could have a city rec league. My son coaches high school basketball, and he says it's terrible to see some kids who really love the game and want to play. They're just not, when you get the 12 people on the high school team, there are a lot of good kids out there that don't get to play. And I think we want to make this available. And, if I understand there's some issues about transportation, but I know other cities do it, and we could do it. And I think we need to have a vibrant recreation program. The end of the day, the acid test is how many kids we got participating. And I think we need to start getting a measure of that.
Yes, sir.
All right. I appreciate it, Ms. Ohm.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? With that, city manager's update.
Thank you, Mayor. There are a couple of things I wanted to bring you up to date on. I'm gonna ask the TAC folks if they can bring up a slide for me of what we've been working on as it relates to the CARES Act. So here's kind of where we are right now. These are grants that we have been made aware of, are applying for. Most of these are not necessarily competitive. Some of them are reimbursement grants, especially the ones on the public safety side for expenses specifically related to COVID. I shared with you already the big FAA grant, and we are looking at and getting a better understanding of what that means. initially will take care of our operating expenses for 2 years, from January of this year through December of 2020 or 2021, or June of 2021. So what that means for us is our normal subsidy of the airport and transit, we will not have to make from the general fund. So that's going to be very helpful to us. And it appears that they're going to reimburse us for our capital expenses on the transit side, and we'll be able to use some of those dollars for transit improvements that we've identified at the airport. And the mayor's already asked about that. So when we present our SPLOST breakdown next week, we'll talk about the airport projects that we've identified, the estimated costs, and the SPLOST that has been identified for the projects. They have come back and clarified that the 15.9 million is what we'll be awarded up front, and the additional 3 million we will have to compete for and justify the additional needed costs. We're working on the CDBG. You will see that on your next week's agenda, because there is a process to amend their plans in order to utilize that funding. And then assistance with homeless, some of that is for temporary housing, and that some of that is going to be, I believe, for permanent supportive housing going forward for the homeless. And that just about covers it. It's a big number. It's an exciting number, but you know, federal money comes with lots of strings attached. So we want to be careful to make sure that we use it as directed by the federal government, so that this community doesn't have to end up paying back money that we have spent that is not consistent with the grant. So any questions for me on where we are with CARES Act funding?
Mayor Pro Tem? Commissioner Fuller?
No, that's great. That's exciting. Is there any other, I know there's been lots of talk federally, and then also things going on in the state. Is there any other funding that that you're aware of that might be coming to the city of Albany, whether it be federal or state funded?
Well, just about all the funds right now are federal. You've heard that the governor was awarded a significant sum, $4.1 billion for Georgia. We are respectfully asking him to share that with cities that are under 500,000. And if he accepts, I'm working with GMA on their committee that's providing advisory committee to the governor, and obviously we are making a strong case. I will say right now there's no funding for lost revenue, and that's going to be our biggest challenge. And so that change would have to be made at the federal level, even for us to get funds from the state, federal funds from the state, that would allow us to recoup some of our lost revenue. And of course, the areas where we're anticipating the greatest losses would be in sales tax and hotel motel, and potentially on the utility side as well. So what we are, we've been invited to participate in a call with the I think it's Department of Revenue on Thursday, which is the last day of the month, which means they will have potentially the previous month's sales tax numbers. So that will be our first look at what the sales tax reductions look like since the pandemic. And so we're all kind of holding our breath to see what that's going to be.
Well, from the utility side, how are things with MEAG right now?
MEAG is status quo.
I'm sorry, say again?
They're pretty much status quo. They've made no changes.
What do you mean they made the changes?
They have made no changes.
Oh,
Am I answering your question, Commissioner Fuller? I'm not sure.
I guess, you mentioned reimbursement from the state. You mentioned the utility side. So, just wondering. Obviously, MEAG is a big part of our utility, and didn't know if there'd been any concessions or any discussions on putting off payments to MEAG or anything like that. In any discussions that you'd had or that utility board had had.
Lots of discussions, but no concessions at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Fletcher.
I'm looking at this because as a business owner, and actually I am in the business that's been hit the hardest. Sales tax is crucial, and sales tax is the true gauge of where we're at. I hear about this and the utility reimbursement, this and this, but it's imperative to me that we absolutely look at our customers that have been in good standing and we take care of them. I mean, it's I'm seeing people. I just got an executive order from the governor as far as restaurants, and it looks like there is a possibility that the restrictions could last for another 120 days. I've talked with Bo Henry and others on how this is going to work, and we are almost 60% of the income of small businesses in this community, and we need to really pay attention. I know it. I understand that we've bent on homes, etc. But you know what, guys? So many homes, so many individuals have received 1,200, 600, XXX. And I hope that we don't waste what we give on people that had the opportunity to pay their bills, pay etc. Because small businesses in this community are a key away from losing their livelihood. And I hope as a commission that we take that into consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, just looking at the spreadsheet, Sharon, the exciting thing is the line item with the highest amount of money is the one that we've got the positive news about. So that's really exciting, and that's great news. And obviously, look for more positive news on the other line items on there as well.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No comments.
Commissioner Young?
Oh, yes, sir. I did want the city manager to maybe mention, I think the Community Economic Development already has a virtual meeting set up about the first available funding in the $500,000 on the I guess that's the COVID-19 DCED funding, and when is that going to be, and exactly what is that date?
I do not have the date in front of me. I don't know if Selena or Phyllis are on the call. If you can jump in for me. Unfortunately, I have so many dates swimming around in my head. I don't want to give you the wrong thing, but I do know at your meeting next week, you'll be looking at their action plans, which have to be approved by the board. And that does outline when the public hearings and the community meetings have to be to get input. The proposal right now is to provide for not just assistance for individuals, but assistance for local small businesses as well.
Okay.
And somebody Phyllis just texted me, it's April 30th. So it's this Thursday.
This Thursday. Does she have a time for that? Or where we can find details on that meeting?
We will be putting, We will definitely be putting that out on our page, our website, and it is between 12 and 1:30.
Okay. And I guess, Mayor, since, you know, we had a little bit of misinformation from the media about what you had tasked me with. I thought if you would like to clarify what it was you were tasking me with and not necessarily putting me in charge of millions of dollars in federal funding, that you kind of, you know, kind of clear that up for, you know, anybody that may still be confused about this money, so that they'll know that the Commissioner of Ward 6 is not in charge of any of this money, and that the staff has done a wonderful job. I love this spreadsheet, and I love the fact that we have this laid out in front of us like that. And one thing I was going to ask, okay. Now, are we anticipating, because I know we had talked about the GMA, the GMA was trying to get us to lobby for this fourth round of money. So this money is just grant money. It's not any money that was allocated directly for municipalities. We haven't gotten any money yet, basically.
Right, and we're not going to get, you know how this works. You don't get a lump sum of cash. You make the expenditure, you submit, and they reimburse us, usually at our split. But of course, these are grant funds that are 100% federally funded. And so what we're trying to lobby for is help for municipal governments that doesn't fit into one of these neat categories. A lot of the neat categories have been identified. These are all relationships that we already have. We have grants with all these people already. We're grantors. We get this federal money every year for different grants. Most of the times they're smaller grants, obviously. So these relationships already exist. The challenge that we foresee is the revenue losses, which is unusual, and we may not be successful in getting any federal funding for revenue losses, but we feel like it's important to ask, because that is part of the impacts of the coronavirus to our community. You know, and to the extent that we have revenue losses, it impacts our ability to provide services, some of the ones we just talked about. Some communities are looking at having to increase their millage rate, their utility rates, you know, and their fees and fines in order to be able to balance their budgets. We're not in that situation, but if this was protracted and went on for years, it would be very detrimental to us as well.
Okay. One last thing, and this is a question can kind of go to our lawyers here in the group. I know that the fourth round of funding, one of the stipulations that I think Senator McConnell was trying to make was that this money, if it did come to state and local authorities, was that we do something about decreasing liability to businesses for, I guess, any COVID related, you know, risks that people are taking. And I just want to kind of, it was just something I was thinking out loud, because I at first I was like, you know, maybe, you know, he's just trying to hang up the money. But then I thought it might be a good idea, because we don't, you know, you can't sue anybody over necessarily catching a cold or a virus from going into an establishment. But just, you know, maybe just some thoughts real quick on what the business owners are right now risking by being open, and maybe be open to, you know, some lawsuits if somebody gets sick.
Ms. Davis?
Yeah.
Who's going to speak to that?
I'd love to speak to that.
Fine, I'll defer it. I'll come back later.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'm a business owner, and I've been asked that question that, hey, if you open up and someone comes in and they eat with you and 5 days later they get the virus, are you okay with a lawsuit? Really? What in the 5 days have you done other than eat with me? And that is exactly what is wrong with this community. That is exactly what's wrong with this country. These people think they're entitled to come in here and get what they want. And when something happens and it doesn't go their way, they want to whip out a one call that's all lawsuit. Well, I'm going to tell you, as a business owner that has 64 families that is struggling to make ends meet, we are doing everything we can do to keep these people above, their heads above water. Dimitri, if these people want to sue, that's on them. If they want to feed the lawyers that are waiting for this, that's on them. But you're going to prove to me, if you walk, when I do open up, when Bo Henry does open up, Austin's and all of us, that could be opened yesterday, but we have chose to wait for our local officials, our coroner and our hospital to tell us when they are comfortable with us opening. If you want to come into my restaurant, if I choose to open next week, and you want to get the virus and you want to blame it on me, and you know what? I'm ready for you. I'm ready for you. That's what I've got to say. Thank you.
Okay, I think Commissioner Young was requesting a legal opinion. You want to think about that, Mr. Davis, and get back? I mean, my. Yep.
Yeah, can I talk about that real quick? Because I'm kind of confused about what I guess Commissioner Fletcher's response was. I was simply asking what, again, a legal opinion about where the businesses were risking by opening up. And like I said, that was tied into the fourth round of funding where Senator McConnell was asking that, there be some legislation attached to it that basically absolve any COVID-related lawsuits, or you couldn't sue because you caught COVID from a restaurant. So that's all I was asking. I don't know, I guess, kind of where Commissioner Fletcher was going with that. But
no, I'll tell you where I'm going. Commissioner Young, you have a great organization out here called Better Ways Grocery. I've had people that has used them. They're going to these communities and they're doing the very best they can do. But decide that I want to all of a sudden say that I stepped on their mobile unit and I caught the virus. There's nothing that we can do about that. There's absolutely nothing. There's not, unless the legislative body and the government comes up and says you cannot sue anyone over COVID virus 19. There's absolutely nothing we can do. This this community is one of the highest community for lawsuits. We've got people chomping at the bit.
Mr.
And what
Fletcher.
I'm telling you, there's nothing. Nathan Davis can't answer that. Bo, which is an attorney, Bob Langstaff, there's nothing that can be done or said about that, because when we open our doors, if somebody wants to come in and say they tripped because they felt weak because they got the virus, that is something that we have to deal with. We've dealt with it long before this virus. We will deal with it long after this virus. And I will tell you that the businesses here, you can imagine going down Dawson Avenue and seeing all of the independent entrepreneurs that are fighting to keep their doors open. If we don't open next week, if we don't open up week after next, I hope you all enjoy corporate America, because that's all you're going to be able to eat at. Have a great day.
Thank you, Commissioner Fletcher. I think we kind of got a little far afield there, and we'll,
We got no far.
ma'am?
We didn't get a far field. That is the truth.
No, I'm
I
not.
am just trying to, and I know.
Well, let's
that
go
this
ahead.
is
Let's move on, Commissioner Fletcher.
Move on.
I appreciate,
Move on.
I mean, your frustration, and I know you're going through a difficult time, and other restaurateurs are going through a difficult time. But so does that conclude the agenda? Okay. Items for future agenda, Mayor Pro Tem.
Give me a second.
I did have one more thing.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to belabor it. It's getting late. But if you can bring the other slide up for me, tech guys. I just want you to all be aware that we have a bunch of projects and requests from the board. Can you hear me?
The city clerk cannot hear you, but I can hear you.
Okay. So this is a spreadsheet
I can hear you.
that I'll send out via email.
Wait, Ms. Subadan, hold on, please. I guess the city clerk has to hear you so she can take
Sure.
the minutes. So can we find out what our problem here is? If y'all will bear with us, please. I'm sorry. We have it? Okay, so it's your headphones. I didn't know that could happen, but okay. Sorry, Ms. Subadan, it's actually the headphones is the problem, not the...
All right. Yeah, I wanted you to just get a sense of what items we are getting from each of you. If you can go to the next page, you know, we get letters and requests, and we have follow-up items from meetings. We are getting emails from you, and I didn't want you to think that we're not tracking it. I didn't want you to think that we're not working on your items. Mayor, you sent a letter dated the 20th to the Parks Department. I didn't see it until almost a week later. It is being worked on. Some of these things, you know, require extensive research to find plans that go back to 2006 and 2001, and get us, you know, get all the financials from fiscal 2009. It's not a complaint, it's just an observation, and to let you know we are working on your items. But the current crisis and the reason I presented the other information before this is to let you know that we're juggling different priorities. We're not dropping the ball on your requests, but please understand that we are very, very taxed right now. And we are working on your projects. We are working on your items. I am trying to bring you a balanced budget. We're scrambling to try to figure out, you know, what does the new normal look like for us. We had our budget balanced and thought we were in great shape, and now we're wondering kind of what that's going to look like. So we're developing contingency plans such that if things change, we're still in a position to do everything that you want us to do. So I will be sending this out, and I know you get a lot of emails, but if you're wondering what the status of your project is, you know, take a look at that, and you know, we'll be happy to give you a specific update. But items that you've asked us to put on the agenda, items that you've asked us to research are in process. And we'll send that out to you. The last thing I wanted to share, and I sent you an email on it earlier, is Mask Up Albany. This was a grassroots initiative that we started, and it's getting really good feedback, really good response from the community. You saw earlier the email regarding the donation from Procter & Gamble. I'd like to go ahead and receive that unless somebody has an objection. That is all going to be distributed to the community. Commissioner Young, you'll be happy to know that we'll be doing significant distributions in the zip codes that are most affected in your ward. And I'm sure with Baptist and the Hope Center are going to be partnering with us and with Feed the Valley to get masks out, and the masks will be in a Ziploc bag with hand sanitizer and a little pamphlet that tells people why to wear masks, how to clean them, how to take care of them. And so the first thing I'd like is, you know, does anybody have an objection to me accepting the donation from Procter & Gamble?
Mayor Pro Tem?
You have to unmute Mayor Pro Tem.
Would it be distributed equal throughout the whole city?
Yes, we are gonna, as I said, we're gonna be using or working with Sherwood on getting the distributions out. We've gotten confirmation that the testing centers that are coming online are willing to distribute for us as well. We've been in conversation with Sawega Council on Aging. So we're really trying to get this out to the most disaffected individuals who have the least opportunity to be able to get masks.
Commissioner Fuller?
Yes, I'd say please distribute those and accept the grant as soon as possible and distribute those in the most needed areas.
Thank you. Commissioner Fletcher? Commissioner Worthington?
You skipped 3?
Sir?
You skipped Fletcher?
And Mr. Fletcher didn't say anything.
Oh.
You still on the call? I think she's no longer on the call.
No, I'm 100% for it. I think that's awesome. I mean, P&G's continues to be a great, partner in our community, and that's awesome for them to be able to donate that type of thing to our community. That's awesome.
Commissioner Langstaff?
Yes.
Commissioner Young?
Yes, that's great.
Okay, I think we need to publicly recognize P&G for the contribution. So, but not on this list, Madam City Manager. I want us to consider transferring all road construction projects to be funded under T-Splost. I see the last few times that the funding sources have been divided up. I want the commission to address that. And also, you got my letter about the code enforcement, did you not?
I did. That's on the list. We'll be preparing a response for you. And on the T-Splost, we're going to bring that information to you. we're going to bring that one to you next week for you to look at SPLOST 7 and look at T-SPLOST. It will take a vote of the board to move everything. I think there's a way to have a plan that can be satisfactory to the board, but we plan to bring T-SPLOST and SPLOST to the next board meeting for you to look at what we've laid out, and then you can collectively make a decision.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Now, but going back to
Yeah,
the code
well,
enforcement.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry. I'm sorry, Ward 2, Matt Fuller. I just say, certainly want to look at anything before we move to say that everything would be moved under T-SPLOST that was approved for road construction, because there was a big effort and discussion about road construction when we approved T-SPLOST and that. So we'd certainly want to have some discussion before we do that.
Well, that's what we're getting it on the item on the agenda for.
Next week.
Commissioner Fuller, we'll discuss it, and it's my position, and if more than 3 folks disagree with me, we'll, first, I think the commission ought to make the decision about where the money comes from. But I really believe we ought to clearly delineate it, but if that's not the will of the commission, we won't do so. But I always want to get it on the agenda to talk about it, to discuss it.
Next
week.
Very, very, very good. Look forward to the discussion.
Okay, and then secondly, I mean, I don't see why we need an item on the code enforcement. The city charter says clearly the head of the code enforcement's a department head. So what I look forward, if there's some disagreement about that, we'll address that, but I think that's resolved.
Well, I'd like to speak to that.
No, we're not going to speak to it. We're going to adjourn, and we're going to resume here in a minute. We'll take 5 minutes.
Just asked if anybody disagreed with it. I disagree with you on it.
Okay, we adjourned, and we'll resume in 5 minutes.
That seems sort of silly to ask for disagreement.
We'll call the regular meeting to order. It's 8:17. Mayor Pro Tem, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag.
The flag. The United States of America.
And to the republic, which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Ward 2.
Yes.
Ward 3. Ward 3. Ward 4.
Here, present.
Ward 5.
Here.
Ward 6.
Here.
And Mayor.
I'm here. First item.
First item is approval of the minutes of the previous meeting.
So moved, and we approve the minute.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion regarding approval of minutes? If not, we'll call the roll. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Commissioner Fuller?
Yes.
Commissioner Fletcher? Commissioner Fletcher's not participating. Commissioner Worthington?
Yes.
Commissioner Langstaff?
Yes.
Commissioner Young?
Yes.
Mayor votes yes. The minutes are approved. The first item.
That is a motion to reinstate the vacations at commission meeting.
Okay, this has been discussed. Commissioner Worthington's item.
I'll make a motion. We reinstitute the invocation starting in May.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. Ma'am? Commissioner Fuller, did you second?
Yes, that was from me.
Yeah, Commissioner Fuller. Any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem.
No discussion.
Commissioner Fuller.
No, sir.
Commissioner Worthington.
No.
Commissioner Langstaff.
The only question I got, are we including the changes that Nathan recommended in his last email?
I guess Mr. Davis can speak to that.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I would hope that would happen. You can see from the email that went out, the key is the selection process, and if you can pass muster on the selection process, it avoids a lot of the other issues in this type case. And you'll see the court went out of their way in the 11th Circuit to suggest use the yellow pages, use the internet, have someone in charge in the city keeping up with the process, consult the Chamber of Commerce. So I would hope that y'all could agree on adopting that as part of the process. And if there's some administrative help that could be provided in my office, I'd be glad to sit down with them and we could go over this. And if any of y'all want to participate and come up with a formal process and someone who will actually be in charge, and a key part of all this is the with all due respect, you could tell the court just doesn't like the elected officials to have the absolute selection. The fancy word, the plenary power to choose these speakers, and so I think that needs to be handled it just does not rotate among the elected officials. Instead, it involves members of the community or whatever different process. But I think that's a fatal flaw if there's the practice is rotating it among the elected officials for selection.
Commissioner Langstaff, do you have any other questions?
Well, I mean, I guess my question is that somebody made the motion, I guess Chad made the motion. Is he making it with modifications that Nathan recommended? Is that what's before us?
No, my motion was for the plan we had talked last week.
Okay. Any other questions?
Were you moving on from?
Is Commissioner Langstaff? You done?
I mean, I guess if that's Nathan's legal advice, I don't fly in the face of it. So.
Okay.
I mean, I'm in favor of invocations. I'm just want to follow whatever Nathan says we have to do it. So.
Okay. Commissioner Young?
Yeah, I had a similar concern as Commissioner Langstaff, because what the city attorney described was exactly what I was talking about last week, that I didn't think that particular function should be put in the hands of a commissioner, because then it becomes a execution or something that's within their power, and something that's kind of taken out of the hands of the public. And I know you're always going to be in hot water when you start doing those type things. So, unless we just want to open up a can of worms, I'm for invocations as well, but I don't think commissioners should be the ones choosing who gets to come and do an invocation.
Okay, is that all?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, having heard the city attorney's concerns, I'm still going to vote for the motion, but I would hope that we could work through this with some modification. Obviously, we don't want to foul of any First Amendment problems, and I would suggest that we just solicit the names of ministers who might be interested in giving an invocation, and we'll select people off that list.
Can I make a secondary motion?
Okay, yes, sir. I think that's right, isn't it? Substitute motion?
Substitute motion?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I would like to make a substitute motion that we bring back the invocation with the modifications that the city attorney placed forth in his email.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the substitute motion? Commissioner Langstaff. Any discussion on the substitute motion? Commissioner Worthington, would you accept that as a friendly amendment?
Yeah, so in talking with Attorney Davis, it seemed like we spoke Friday that I think it's not forbidden for an elected official to, I guess, recommend, but it shouldn't be 100% of the time. So I think one of the options he and I thought was maybe half the time allow a commissioner to, recommend someone, and then some of the other times would be on a volunteer, I guess, based on the clerk or based on different individuals, presenting their name. So I guess in terms of your substitute motion, there really needs to be a gatekeeper. And so I would assume part of your motion, but I guess Sonia would be the gatekeeper or clerk. And whether we gave her names or whether individuals submitted their own names, I think that would meet the intent where we still could have some input in terms of names, as well as anybody in the community could submit their name as, hey, I want to do the invocation. Is that what you were thinking, Demetrius?
Yes, sir. And I guess more specifically to what Attorney Davis, sought out in his email, that the process be, if we're going to do it, it's just, the courts make it a necessity that is open to the public, and in any way that, there is, as you say, some type of gatekeeper, then that keeps the public out, and that's what the courts are going to always hit you with. And I rather not, because I know somebody's going to test it. That's going to be automatic. We have, people in the community who are not for prayer. I know the majority of us are, but as soon as you do this and you say, okay, we're going to do it this way, they're going to come and put it to a legal test, almost automatically. So we just need to kind of think it out a little bit more.
Okay. Any further discussion on the substitute motion?
I just have a
Yes, sir.
question for Nathan. Does that solve the problem? Our substitute motion, does that satisfactory to you?
Well, yes, that's what I was going to comment on. Thank you. Using the city clerk as an example, it wouldn't necessarily be a gatekeeper, but if that's what your choice is, that's where the yellow pages would be kept, and contact would be made from that office to every church that's listed. Let us know if you want to, do an invocation, and stay in touch with the Chamber of Commerce and the other things the courts say. And then maybe the elected officials would only have every third meeting to make a choice, something like that. It would work out. That my impression is something like that would pass muster, but it sounds like it's a pretty big job to get up the database of all. Maybe it's not with all the electronics available to the city clerk's office, but I think that would pass muster if it's done that way.
Well, and I might say, this is Matt Fuller from Ward 2. Do we need to specify at this point, if we're going to put a time limit on that, how that goes? We give 1 minute for the invocation, or however that goes. We should probably, if we're going to, and I know we're not voting on that tonight, but when we do, we should probably specify what that time limit is.
Well, yes, hopefully maybe by next meeting there could at least be a rough draft out there that says contact will be made by such and such office, again using the one you suggested. Some of the yellow pages will have a database. Database will also include other entities, and then we'll the city will make an affirmative effort to contact everybody and let them know that once a month at our tonight's meeting, and just see how much interest there is and keep track of all the responses and that type of thing. Yes,
Okay.
sir. If it's going to be like that.
Wait. Let's kind of get this back in that road. On the substitute motion, Mayor Pro Tem, you have any comments? Okay, Commissioner Fletcher. Commissioner Fuller, do you have anything further?
No, sir.
Okay, good. Commissioner Fletcher is no longer with us. Commissioner Warmington.
No, I'm good.
Okay. And Commissioner Langstaff?
Nothing further.
Commissioner Young?
I'm good.
Okay. And Commissioner Warmington, are you satisfied with that substitute motion or not satisfied?
Mm-hmm.
You
I'm
are?
good.
Okay. Let's call the roll on the substitute motion.
2. Ward 2. Commissioner Fuller.
Yes.
Okay. Ward 3 is absent. Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes. The next item.
The next item is the public work cruise quarters from WJ Kersey Construction, Albany, Georgia. Total expenditure of $788,900.
We discussed this at the last meeting. I had an opportunity to visit the site. Do we have a motion to approve the contract to WJ Kersey Construction? Sir?
You're on mute.
Do we have a motion? Second?
I'll say.
Motion a second. Any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem.
No discussion.
Commissioner Fuller.
No, sir.
Commissioner Warrington.
No discussion.
Commissioner Langstaff.
No.
Commissioner Young.
No discussion.
Call the question. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes.
Commissioner Fuller.
Yes.
Commissioner Warrington.
Yes.
Commissioner Langstaff.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Mayor votes yes. Next item on the agenda, we go to resolution.
Resolution authorizing Clause 7, T-SPLOST and element for resurfacing street. 3.
Offer the resolution as today.
A second.
Second.
Any discussion, Mayor Pro Tem?
No discussion.
I apologize, Mayor. I could not understand what that was. Please, could you recite it?
Yes, sir. I hope you can hear me. Authorize SPLOST 7, T-SPLOST, and LMIG funding for resurfacing streets.
Yes, sir. Loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay. And we call the question, Commissioner Fuller.
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Warrington.
No question.
We'll call for the vote.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Fletcher says she is on. I don't know if she's on. Commissioner Fletcher, can you unmute?
Well, let's go ahead with it. Let's go ahead with it.
Okay. All right, sorry.
Commissioner Langstaff?
I'm abstaining.
Abstaining. Okay. Commissioner Young?
Yes.
And again, we have assurance that the situation on Whispering Pines is going to be corrected.
Yes, sir. That. Can you hear me? Yes, that is happening as we speak.
Okay. The mayor votes yes, and so the resolution passes. Okay, the last item on the agenda, Madam Clerk.
Transportation Alternative Program Grant Award from the Federal Department of Transportation.
Okay. We've discussed this. Here's a second.
Yeah, I second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I had one. Well, one question.
Can I go by the roll? Call the roll.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah.
No, I mean, no. Any discussion?
No discussion.
Commissioner Fuller? Commissioner Fuller? Any discussion?
I'm good to proceed if you can hear me.
Sir?
I'm good to proceed if you can hear me.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Fletcher, is she back?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Yes,
hear
ma'am. We got you now.
Okay.
Okay, we're considering the resolution to accept Transportation Alternative Program Grant Award from the Federal Department of Transportation.
I vote yes.
Okay, we're on discussion. Commissioner Fletcher, we're on discussion right now.
Okay. It's very sketchy. I'm trying to catch what I can. Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Warrington, you got any comments?
Yeah, I just had a question for Lucretia. So in the other grant that Paul was talking about for the sidewalks, there was a section that was added around the Harlem district, and I was just trying to look through the data here. It looks like this grant stops short of the Hart, so there's not an overlap with those two grants.
That is correct. Actually, when we applied for the TAP grant, the one you guys are voting on tonight, we actually wanted to include the Harlan district, but because of the grant funding amounts, we stopped there and we had intentionally put the Harlan district in the build grant so that we could continue the work, but that it would not include an overlay. I'm actually working with Paul on the build grant, so we've been certainly collaborating to make sure that we get both pots of funds.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. If they both come through, then it would be a seamless piece of work.
That is
Okay.
correct.
All right.
Is that all? Commissioner Langstaff?
No questions.
Commissioner Young?
No more questions.
Okay, we'll call the vote. Mayor Pro Tem? Commissioner Fuller?
Yes.
Commissioner Fletcher?
Yes.
Commissioner Worthington?
Yes.
Commissioner Langstaff?
Yes.
Commissioner Young?
Yes.
Mayor votes yes. Any other business?
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, any other business?
Nope.
Commissioner Fuller?
No, sir.
Commissioner Fletcher?
No, sir.
Commissioner Worthington?
No.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No.
Commissioner Young?
No, sir.
Okay, with that, we will be adjourned. Good night.
Good night.